Alright, this is Algebra 1, 2.2 in the book, and let me find my pen. Our vocabulary to adding real numbers is the name of the lesson. It's on page 74 in the book. So like I've told you, make sure that you stay with me on the page numbers here, page 74. Additive inverse, or additive identity and additive inverse, and those are found. Let's see if we can find where those are. I'm gonna take a guess that, yep, top of page 76, additive identity. The number 0 is the additive identity. That means any number plus 0 is that number. Okay? And then the additive inverse is another way of saying the opposite. So the opposite of a number is its additive inverse. So a lot of times in algebra I'll say we need to do the opposite of adding, which would be to subtract, which would be the negative version, so that is the opposite. So let's go through and do some of these examples. Adding two integers on a number line. So we're adding integers, so here's a way to use a number line. We'll start with the number line and then we will do it without a number line, but if it says use a number line, you must use a number line. So what you do, I won't draw the pictures because they do a good job of it. You start with a number line and you start at 0. They do a good number of making the picture but not showing it very well. Or I guess they're doing it a little different than me. I started 0 and I traveled to -3. That's what the first number tells me to do, is move to the left -3. Then the next number tells me to move to the right because it's positive. Okay, left. You move left when it's negative. You move right when the number is positive. And then go 6, that'd be 3, 4, 5, 6, and you'd end at 3. So -3 plus 6 is +3. And you may have already known that, but we're just trying to gain a little bit of an understanding on a number line. So -4 plus -5. And the way they're starting at -4, but I usually start at 0 and I move to -4 for the first number. And then I go up and I move 5 more for the second number. They're both negative, so notice I'm continuing to move to the left, and the answer is -9. Okay, so for our guided practice, using a number line to find the sum, if we know we got to go all the way to 7. Let's go by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8. So I started, the first thing I'm going to do is go over to 7, which is right there. Then I'm going to go back to 1, 2, which is a little tough when I've numbered by 2s, which puts me at +5. So there's my number line to find the sum. The answer is 5. 8 plus -11. So again, 2, 4, 8. We can go -2, -4 if we want. So we start at 0. First thing I'm going to do is travel over to 8. And then I come up and travel 11. There's 8, 9, 10, 11, which would put me right in there at -3. So remember, left negative, right positive. And the answer is -3. Use the number line to find the sum again. So -3 plus, -8 plus 4. Let's number by 4s. -4, -8. So we're going to go over to -8 first, then the right back 4. So the answer would be -4. Just trying to make it easier for us. -1 plus -4. So the one where they want us to go in the Okay, so we start traveling, gotta go left, then we go 4 more left, we end up at -5. And we agree with them. Alright, so now let's look at finding the sum. There is a key concept box that I want you guys to write right now. Okay, that key concept is on the top of page 75. And in the key concept box, it talks about the rules for adding. And I'm going to also talk about, I kind of do them the same way. Maybe I'm a little bit different, but let's talk about the rules for adding. There's 2 situations in adding. We can have the signs be the same. That means they can both be positive or they could both be negative. When the signs are the same, all you do, and they use absolute value, but just think of the numbers. All you do is add the numbers. Don't look at the signs, don't pay attention, just look at the numbers and add them, and then the sign stays the same. So watch. 7 plus 2 is 9. You know that. Well, that's a positive and a positive. So you added them and got 9, and the sign stayed positive. So let's try 2 negatives. -3 plus -2. Add the numbers, you get 5, and the sign stays negative. That's all you do if the signs are the same. Now if the signs are different, okay, if the signs are different, you are going to subtract, and they say the absolute value, but we're just going to look at the numbers. Subtract the numbers, and the sign is the sign of the biggest number. So check this out. The example in the book uses -12 plus 7. Okay, they're different. One's negative, one's positive. So you subtract those numbers because really 7 positives cancel out with 7 of those negatives. And canceling out is subtraction, so that would be 5. And there are more negatives than positive, the sign with the biggest number, the 12, so the answer would be -5. And let's try one more. They have 18 plus -4, and notice they have that in parentheses just to separate the 2 signs so they don't run together. The signs are different, so you subtract and you get 14, and now there's more positives than negatives, so it is +14. So there's our key concept for adding. So let's take a look at a couple of these. Get rid of this. Okay, so first thing I do is I look at them and I say, okay, the signs are the same. So I just add the numbers, lining up the decimals. Bring that straight down, that's a 2. So my answer would be -10.2 because the 2 negatives would stay negative. Let's see if they agree. And by just taking the numbers, when I took the 5.3 and the 4.9, I took their absolute value. And that, I think their explanation is a little confusing. I think if you stick with mine, you'll be good. All right, this one, the signs are different, so you subtract them, and always when you subtract, you put the bigger number on top. So 19.3 minus 12.2, and you subtract. And the 19 is bigger than the 12, so it's +7.1. There's our answer. So they're doing the same thing. They subtract, and they get 7.1. Okay, example number 3. Properties of addition. And this is another key concept box. We got a lot of writing, you guys, to do. Okay, key concept on page 75. We have a lot of properties. These are properties of addition. If you can't read my writing, then go to page 75. The first one we have is the commutative property. Okay, basically the commutative property says you can add. That's my washing machine. You can hear that. So for example, 3 plus 5 equals 5 plus 3. That's the commutative property of addition. The associative property means that you can group numbers in any, and they say any way or in any order. So watch, 2 plus 3 plus 5. You can put 2. You can add 2 plus 3 first, or you could add 3 plus 5 first. Totally depends on whichever order you want to do it in. So that's the associative property. The identity property. These are all of addition. Okay, the identity property is just adding 0. Any number plus 0 is 0. And then the inverse property is when you add a number and its opposite, it's always 0. 3 plus negative 3 is always 0. 5 plus negative 5 is always 0. So a number and its negative is always, or its opposite is always 0. Okay, so let's identify some of these. Alright, the statement, and this is on the top of page 76, and the property illustrated. So here's, and if you remember back on our notes when we moved the parentheses around, didn't matter what order we added in, so that would be the associative property. That's a number and its opposite, which is 0, which is the very last one we just talked about, which was the inverse property. And then this didn't matter. This, they just switched the order. Remember, it doesn't matter what order you add in. So that's the commutative property. All right, so just be familiar with the properties, be able to recognize those. Example number 4, solve a multi-step problem. The table shows the annual profits of 2 piano manufacturers. Which manufacturer had the greater total profit for the 3 years? So if you look at these, okay, you can see that they both lost money on year 1. That's the 2 negative numbers. Year 2, they both made money, and year 3. So what I would do is I would add those up. So let's see how they did it. They took the first one and they added the 3 numbers. Remember, it doesn't matter what order you add in. Notice they chose to add the 2 positive numbers first, and that's a good strategy when you have more than 2 numbers, is to add all the positives together, add all the negatives together, then put them together for the answer. So let's see what their profit was. 9.7 million, and then B. See how they grouped those numbers together, and then again they added the positives together, and so 9.6 million. So 9.7 million is greater than 9.6 million, so manufacturer A had the greater total profit just by $100,000. Okay, so find the sum. Again, we have 2 negative numbers, so we know that we just take those 2 numbers and we add them. 7.3, and since it was negative, it's negative 7.3. And notice I put the 6.7 on the top because it doesn't matter the order. That's called the commutative property. Negative 7.3. This one, we have a positive and a negative, so since the signs are opposite, we subtract the 2 numbers. And there's more negatives than positives, so it's negative 6.1. Get rid of some. Alright, this one, negative 13.1 plus 8.7, again they have opposite signs, so we subtract. Notice, since these are decimals, I'm lining up my decimals, so I have to borrow. 11 minus 7 is 4, bring the decimal down, borrow again. 4.4, now I have to figure out what sign it's going to be. There's more negatives, so the answer is negative 4.4. Okay, identify the property being illustrated. And let me get rid of this. Alright, 7 plus negative 7, those are opposites. So that's called the inverse property. Any number plus 0, that's the identity property. And if you're not sure, look back on page 75. Remember, you can always look back where you're doing the assignments in your notes or in your examples. That's the switch the order. That's called the commutative property. What if in example 4, suppose the profits for year 4 are negative 1.7 million for manufacturer A and negative 2.1 million for manufacturer B? Which has the greater profit in those 4 years? So they add a year, so A, look in my book, A was at 9.7, B was at 9.6. Well, let's see, A lost 1.7 million, so they're at 8. B lost 2.1, so they're at 7.5. So manufacturer A would still have the greater profit over the, and we already had those first 3 figured up. I just used what example 4 had to help with that. Alright, so you're adding. Remember, when you're adding the rules, well, the signs are the same, you just add them and the sign stays the same. When the signs are different, you subtract them and it's the sign of the bigger number. Some of them will ask for number lines, so make sure you do what the instructions say, and we'll see you next time.